My husband raised a glass at our anniversary dinner and told everyone I wasn't on his level. 2 years later, I sold my company for $15 million, and he was being escorted out of my award ceremony by security. Here is how I got the ultimate revenge. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a part. And let me know in the comments below. Have you ever stayed in a relationship hoping the other person would change? Let's get started. The crystal chandelier suspended above our table at Marcelosa's refracted the light into 1,000 miniature rainbows, sparkling like diamonds. It was the kind of lighting designed to make everything look beautiful, but all I could focus on was the curl of my husband's lip, a smirk that I had once mistaken for confidence. Around the table, Brandon's colleagues from Sterling Financial and their impeccably groomed wives sat in anticipation. I had worn my favorite red dress, a garment that usually made me feel invincible, believing this dinner was a celebration of us. It was our 5-year anniversary. I was wrong. To another successful quarter, Brandon announced, his voice booming with the self-assurance of a man who believed he owned the room. The guests raised their glasses, murmuring agreement. Then, Brandon turned his gaze toward me. It wasn't a look of affection. It was cold, detached, like a biologist examining a specimen. "You know, Simone here has been a real trooper," he said, swirling his wine. "Supporting me through all those late nights, the business trips." I smiled, a reflex born of habit. For a fleeting second, I thought this was his way of bridging the distance that had grown between us over the last year. I thought he was finally acknowledging me. "But I have to be honest with everyone here," Brandon continued, his tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that silenced the room. "I doubt this joke of a marriage will survive another year. She's simply nowhere near my level." The words didn't hit me like a physical blow. They hit me like ice water, shocking my system into paralysis. My wine glass hovered halfway to my lips. "I mean, look at her," he laughed, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "She works in marketing at some mid-level firm, making what? A fraction of what I bring home? And she genuinely thinks we're equals." Tom Harrison, Brandon's supervisor, let out a sharp bark of laughter. Then his wife, Jennifer, joined in, a tinkling, brittle sound. Slowly, the laughter rippled around the table. They were laughing. They were actually laughing at me. "Brandon, you're terrible," Jennifer giggled, though her eyes danced with amusement. "But honestly, you've come so far. You deserve someone who matches your success." My throat constricted. 5 years. 5 years of proofreading his emails, hosting his dinner parties, soothing his ego, and celebrating his promotions. 5 years of building a foundation I thought we stood on together. "She does try though," Brandon added, taking a sip of his Barolo. "I'll give her that. She tries so hard to keep up with my world." More laughter. They were proud of him for humiliating me. I set my glass down with deliberate precision. My hands were steady, a stark contrast to the crumbling sensation in my chest. A strange calm washed over me, the clarity of absolute devastation. "Why wait a year?" I heard myself say. My voice was low, but it cut through the laughter like a knife. The table went silent. Brandon blinked. "What did you say?" I said, "Why wait a year? Let's end it today." I stood up, smoothing the front of my red dress. "I'll have divorce papers drawn up by Monday. You can sign them and move on to someone who is on your level." Brandon's face drained of color. "Simone, sit down. It was just a joke." "No," I said, grabbing my purse. "A joke is funny. That was cruel. And I'm done." I turned and walked away. The sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor echoed in the sudden silence. I heard Jennifer whispering frantically and Tom clearing his throat, but I didn't look back. Brandon called my name once, but I kept walking, focusing entirely on putting one foot in front of the other until I reached the cool night air. "Simone, wait." I turned to see Gabriel Torres, Brandon's business partner, jogging toward me. He looked pale, his expression grim. He pressed a business card into my hand. "Take this," he said urgently. "Check your email when you get home. I sent you something an hour ago." "Gabriel, I can't." "Just check it," he insisted, his dark eyes intense. "You need to see what I sent." "And Simone, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner." He retreated back to the restaurant, leaving me shivering in the parking lot. I drove home on autopilot, tears blurring the road. When I pulled into the driveway of the house I had bought before I even met Brandon, the house with the blue door I had painted myself, it looked painfully normal. Inside, I bypassed the wedding photos and opened my laptop. The email from Gabriel was there. Time-stamped 7:45 p.m. Subject: I can't stay silent anymore. I clicked it open. "Simone, Brandon has been lying to you for over a year. I've attached evidence. You deserve better." The doorbell rang. It was Candace, my best friend, still in her work clothes. She had seen my distress text. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. We sat at the kitchen table and opened the attachments together. It was a horror show. Photos of Brandon with a woman named Renee. Text messages mocking me. But the bank statements were the final nail. Thousands of dollars withdrawn from our joint savings. Money I had contributed, spent on Renee's rent and jewelry. "He's been stealing from you," Candace whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Almost $70,000. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. "I'm coming home. We need to talk." I looked at Candace, then at the evidence of my shattered life. "Call my mom," I said, my voice breaking. "I need reinforcements." My mother, Patricia Washington, arrived 20 minutes later looking like a general entering a war zone. She was wearing a purple tracksuit and an expression that could curdle milk. She reviewed the evidence, the photos of Brandon and Renee, the degrading texts, the bank statement showing the hemorrhaging of my savings, with a terrifying calmness. "This man," she said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the screen, "has been playing you for a fool. But baby, you are nobody's fool. Do you understand me?" "I understand," I said, wiping my eyes. The shock was fading, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "We need to secure everything," Mom ordered. "Candace, you're good with tech. Make copies. Digital, physical, cloud storage. Everywhere." For the next hour, we turned my kitchen into a command center. Candace was a whirlwind, uploading files to secure drives and printing stacks of documents. I called the number on Gabriel's card. He gave me the name of a lawyer, Lisa Crawford, and explained that what Brandon had done, draining the joint account for an affair, was financial abuse. We heard the car pull into the driveway. "He's here," Candace said, stiffening. "Do you want us to leave?" Mom asked. "No," I said. "Stay." Brandon entered the house looking annoyed rather than apologetic. His tie loosened. When he saw the tribunal waiting for him at the kitchen table, he paused. "What is this?" he demanded. "Patricia, this is between my wife and me. I'd appreciate some privacy." "I'm not going anywhere," Mom said, crossing her arms. "And neither is Candace." Brandon turned to me, putting on his best reasonable guy face. "Simone, you're blowing this out of proportion. It was a joke that went too far. I apologize. Can we move past this?" I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up the stack of printed evidence. I held it out to him. "Move past this?" I asked, my voice steady. "Move past you humiliating me in public? Move past your affair with Renee? Move past you stealing $70,000 from our savings?" His face went white. He snatched the papers, flipping through them. Realization dawned, followed quickly by defensive anger. "Gabriel," he spat. "That traitor." "He told me the truth," I said. "Monday morning, I'm filing for divorce. I'm freezing the accounts. I have a lawyer." "You can't do that," Brandon snapped, throwing the papers on the floor. That money is mine too. I used it for investments. Investments in your mistress's apartment? Candace interjected from the table. Stay out of this, Brandon shouted. Get out, I said. The volume of my voice surprised even me. Get out of my house, Brandon. This is my house too, he sneered. Actually, I said, leaning forward, it's in my name. I bought it 3 years before I met you. You just moved in. You have no claim to it. He froze. He knew I was right. His jaw clenched, veins pulsing in his neck. Fine. I'll go to a hotel. But if you go through with this divorce, I'll fight you for everything. My career, my reputation. You won't win. Everything you built is based on lies, I replied. Get out. He stomped upstairs, packing a bag with the petulance of a child. When the door finally slammed behind him, I collapsed into a chair. Mom put a hand on my shoulder, and Candace poured more tea. We camped in the living room that night, making a nest of blankets, watching old comedies to drown out the silence of the house. Monday morning, Mom accompanied me to Lisa Crawford's office. Lisa was sharp, professional, and terrifyingly efficient. She reviewed the flash drive Candace had prepared. This is excellent, Lisa said. The financial evidence is damning. We'll file for divorce on grounds of adultery and economic abuse. We'll fight for every penny he took, plus interest. She then began asking about the dynamics of our marriage. You work in marketing. Did you ever help him with his work? I paused. All the time. He'd bring home presentations, and I'd rewrite them. I'd give him hooks, angles, data visualization ideas. He always said I had a knack for it. Lisa exchanged a glance with my mother. Simone, did you get credit for that? No. I was just helping my husband. Start digging, Lisa said, her eyes narrowing. Find emails, drafts, anything that proves you did the work. If he used your intellectual property to advance his career while claiming you were nowhere near his level, that is highly relevant to the settlement. That night, I scoured my old laptop. I found years of emails. Try this angle, I had written. Change the opening to this statistic. I found a hidden folder of his drafts where my notes were in the margins. In the final versions, my ideas were there, but my name was nowhere. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had built his reputation on my brain, all while telling the world I was mediocre. The realization didn't make me sad. It made me dangerous. I compiled a new dossier for Lisa. It wasn't just about ending a marriage anymore. It was about reclaiming my value. The conference room at Lisa Crawford's office was sterile, smelling of lemon polish and expensive coffee. On one side of the mahogany table sat Brandon and his attorney, a thin, nervous man named Robert Price. On the other side sat Lisa and me. Brandon looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes, and he wouldn't meet my gaze. It had been 2 weeks since the dinner. In that time, Lisa had filed an emergency motion to freeze our assets and had served him the divorce papers at his office. A touch of poetic justice that I admit I enjoyed. This is ridiculous, Brandon started, his voice raspy. I'm not paying her spousal support. She has a job. And claiming I owe her for intellectual contributions? That's insane. Wives help their husbands. It's what they do. Lisa didn't even blink. She slid a thick binder across the table. According to these emails and document timestamps, Mr. Bennett, your wife didn't just help. She authored key components of the presentations that secured your firm's 3 biggest accounts last year. She refined the messaging, created the visual strategies, and provided the market analysis. Brandon scoffed. She proofread a few slides. We have drafts with her handwriting that are verbatim matches to your final pitches, Lisa countered smoothly. You built your recent promotion on her unpaid labor. Now we can debate this in court, where all these documents, along with the evidence of your affair and the theft of $70,000 from the joint savings, will become public record. I imagine the partners at Sterling Financial would be very interested to see who actually does your work." Brandon's lawyer leaned in and whispered frantically in his ear. Brandon's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. He looked at me then, really looked at me, with a mixture of hatred and fear. "What do you want?" Robert Price asked, clearing his throat. "Full reimbursement of the $70,000 plus interest," Lisa listed, ticking off fingers. "A lump sum of $75,000 for intellectual contributions. And he covers all legal fees." "That's extortion," Brandon shouted, standing up. "Then we go to trial," I said calmly. It was the first time I had spoken. "And everyone finds out everything. Renee, the money, the plagiarism. Everything." Brandon sank back into his chair, defeated. "Fine," he whispered. "Just get it over with." Walking out of that office an hour later, I felt lighter than air. I called Mom from the car. "It's done. We settled. I'm getting everything back and then some." "That's my girl," Mom said. "So, what's next?" "I have an idea," I said, staring at the skyline. "A really big idea." I drove straight to the Grind, a coffee shop where I had agreed to meet Gabriel. I hadn't seen him since the night of the dinner. He was sitting in the corner, looking anxious. "Simone," he said, standing up to hug me. "I heard about the settlement. I'm glad." "I wanted to thank you," I said. "And I wanted to pick your brain." "Anything." "I'm quitting my job," I announced. "All those presentations I fixed for Brandon? All that marketing strategy? I realized I was good at it. Better than him. I'm going to start my own consultancy." Gabriel smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "It's about time. You were the talent in that house, Simone. Everyone at the firm suspected it." "I need a first client," I said boldly. Gabriel pulled out his tablet. "I'm leaving Sterling Financial. I can't work with Brandon after this. I'm starting my own investment firm. I need branding, a website, a strategy. Consider me your first client." I left the coffee shop vibrating with energy and went straight to Candace's loft. She was surrounded by fabric swatches, but she dropped everything when I walked in. "I'm doing it," I said. "I'm starting a business. And I want you to be my partner." Candace's eyes went wide. "Partner? You have the design I have the strategy. We'd be unstoppable. I'm calling it Velocity Creative." "Velocity," she tested the word. "Movement. Speed. I like it." "We split everything 50-50, I said. "We use the settlement money as seed capital. We do this right." We spent the rest of the weekend drafting a partnership agreement. We met with Nicole Harris, a business attorney friend of Candace's, to set up the LLC and ensure we were protected. We found a small, single-room office in a shared workspace building. It wasn't much, just 4 walls and a window overlooking an alley. But when we hung Candace's logo design on the wall, a stylized V suggesting forward momentum, it felt like a palace. Velocity Creative was born from the ashes of my marriage. Every dollar I put into it felt like a reclamation of my self-worth. I wasn't just Simone Bennett, the scorned wife anymore. I was Simone Bennett, co-founder. And I had work to do. The first 3 months of Velocity Creative were a blur of caffeine, takeout food, and relentless hustle. Our office, though small, buzzed with an electric energy that had been missing from my life for years. Candace and I fell into a rhythm. I handled the client strategy and acquisition, while she transformed those abstract concepts into stunning visual realities. Gabriel proved to be the perfect debut client. I poured every ounce of my pent-up creative frustration into his brand identity. We positioned him not just as an investment banker, but as a financial architect for the modern age. When I presented the final package, logo, website, messaging framework, he was floored. This is. He struggled for the word. This is exactly who I wanted to be but didn't know how to say it. He didn't just pay us. He became our biggest evangelist. Through Gabriel, we met Jerome Mills. Jerome was a tech entrepreneur in his early 40s, a man who had exited 2 startups successfully and was looking to launch a platform focused on financial literacy for young adults. He walked into our tiny office wearing jeans and a t-shirt, carrying an aura of quiet intelligence. "Gabriel says you're the real deal," Jerome said, looking at the sketches taped to our wall. "I need a go-to-market strategy that doesn't feel like a lecture. I need it to feel like a movement." "We don't do lectures," I said, sliding a preliminary deck across the table. "We do engagement. We build communities, not just customer bases." Jerome hired us on the spot. With 2 retainer clients, we had cash flow. But we were drowning in work. We were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. "We need help," Candace said one Tuesday night, staring bleary-eyed at her monitor. "I can't design the web assets and the print collateral at the same time unless I grow 2 more arms." She was right. We hired Kara, a junior designer with a portfolio full of wild, colorful ideas, and Theo, a hyper-organized project coordinator who managed to organize my chaotic calendar within 48 hours of starting. Suddenly, we were a team of 4. I felt a profound sense of responsibility every time I signed their paychecks. These people were depending on me. Then came the call that changed the trajectory of the company. Theo knocked on my doorframe. "Simone? You have a call from Carol Stevens, VP of Marketing at Harbinger Corporation." I froze. Harbinger was a regional giant. They were 10 times the size of any client we had. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Ms. Bennett," Carol's voice was crisp. "We've been watching your work with Jerome Mills' new startup. It's fresh. We have a major product launch in 6 months, and frankly, our current agency is giving us safe, boring work. We'd like to see if you can do better." "We'd love the opportunity," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Presentation is next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Don't disappoint me." We spent the next week in a war room mentality. We didn't just research Harbinger. We dissected them. I analyzed their last 5 years of campaigns, finding the gaps where they were losing touch with younger demographics. Candace created mock-ups that were bold, risky, and visually arresting. We weren't aiming to be a safe alternative. We were aiming to be the only logical choice. On Tuesday, Candace and I walked into the Harbinger headquarters. I wore a burgundy power suit, my heels clicking on the polished floor, a sound that reminded me of leaving the restaurant that night. But this time, I was walking toward my future, not away from my past. The conference room was filled with executives. Carol Stevens sat at the head of the table, her face unreadable. We pitched for an hour. We proposed an experiential campaign involving social media challenges, pop-up events, and user-generated content, turning their customers into brand ambassadors. When we finished, the room was silent. Carol leaned back, tapping her pen. "You've done more homework in a week than our current agency did in 6 months, she said finally. "This is risky. But I think it's exactly what we need." We got the account. Walking out of that building, the sun hitting my face, I felt a rush of euphoria. We had landed a whale. Velocity Creative wasn't just a boutique shop anymore. We were a contender. I called Mom immediately. "We got Harbinger." "I never doubted it for a second," she said. "You know, Brandon's old firm used to try and land Harbinger every year. They never could." I smiled. "Well, I guess they just didn't have the right team." The victory felt sweet, but I knew the real work was just beginning. We had to deliver. And I was ready to show the world exactly what a mid-level marketing woman could do. 6 months after landing the Harbinger account, our office had transformed. We knocked down a wall to expand into the adjacent suite, creating a bright, open-plan workspace filled with light and the hum of productivity. We now had 7 full-time employees. The Harbinger launch had been a massive success, exceeding all KPIs and generating a buzz that rippled through the industry. That buzz brought David Price, a journalist from Business Monthly. He called asking for an interview for a feature on rising entrepreneurs. "They want to put you on the cover," Theo told me, his eyes wide. The interview was intense. David asked about my background, the rapid growth of Velocity, and my philosophy on marketing. Then, inevitably, he asked about the personal catalyst. "I understand you started this company immediately following a difficult divorce," he said. "Your ex-husband is Brandon Bennett, formerly of Sterling Financial?" "Correct," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "How did that impact your drive?" "It taught me that I had been playing small," I said carefully. "I realized that the only person placing limits on my potential was me. Sometimes, you need your life to shatter so you can rebuild it differently." When the magazine hit the newsstands, it was surreal. There I was on the cover, arms crossed, looking confident and strong. The headline read, "From Divorce to Empire. How Simone Bennett Built a Marketing Powerhouse." The article didn't shy away from the timeline, contrasting my ascent with Brandon's fall. It mentioned that he had been let go from Sterling Financial due to performance issues and questionable financial practices. I hadn't heard from Brandon in months, but the universe has a way of balancing scales. One Wednesday afternoon, Theo came into my office looking uncomfortable. "Simone, there's a man in the lobby. Brandon Bennett. He's loud. He refuses to leave." I sighed, standing up. "I'll handle it." I found Brandon in our reception area. He looked disheveled, his suit ill-fitting, his face puffy. He was a ghost of the arrogant man who had toasted to his own success at Marcellos's. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice straining. "Not here," I said, guiding him out to the sidewalk. "What do you want, Brandon?" "I saw the article," he said, gesturing vaguely. "Congratulations. You're famous. Is that why you're here?" "I lost my job," he blurted out. "Renee left me. I'm living in a studio apartment. No one will hire me in finance. Word got around about the audit." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it in a detached way. "It was pathetic." "You built all this," he said, looking up at the Velocity Creative sign. "And you used my money to do it." "I used my money," I corrected sharply. "The money you tried to steal." "I made you," he said, his voice rising, a flash of the old arrogance trying to spark. "You wouldn't have any of this if I hadn't pushed you." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You know what? You're partially right. If you hadn't humiliated me, I might have stayed in your shadow forever. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you for showing me that I was better off without you." "Simone, please." His tone shifted to desperation. "I have contacts. I could help you run this place. I need a job." "Absolutely not. We are done. Do not come here again, or I will call security." I turned my back on him and walked into the building. I didn't look back. When I got inside, I told Theo to alert building security that Brandon was persona non grata. That evening, Jerome stopped by. He had become a mentor to me, guiding me through the growing pains of leadership. "I heard about your visitor," Jerome said, sitting in one of the guest chairs. "News travels fast. He's your past, Simone. Don't let him occupy rent in your head. Focus on the future. Speaking of which, you look exhausted. When was the last time you took a day off?" I tried to remember. "I don't know." "Burnout will kill this company faster than any competitor," Jerome warned. "Take a long weekend. That's an order from your board advisor." I promised I would. The encounter with Brandon had rattled me, not because I missed him, but because it showed how far we had diverged. He was stuck in a loop of entitlement and failure. I was moving forward at velocity. I looked around my office, at the awards on the shelf, the team working outside my door. I was building a kingdom. And the king who had exiled me was now begging at the gates. True to my promise to Jerome, I booked a long weekend at a beach resort 3 months later. It was the first time I had stopped moving since the divorce. For the first 24 hours, my hands itched to check my email, but Candace had threatened to change the passwords if I logged in. On the second day, I met a woman named Helen at the resort restaurant. She was in her 70s, elegant and sharp-witted. We got to talking, and I found myself pouring out my story. The divorce, the business, the exhaustion. I spent 50 years being someone's wife, Helen told me, looking out at the ocean. When he passed, I realized I didn't know who I was. I had to learn to choose myself. It sounds like you're learning that lesson much younger than I did. Keep choosing yourself, she said as we parted ways. It's not selfishness. It's survival. That phrase stuck with me. Keep choosing yourself. I returned to the office recharged, which was fortunate because we were about to hit another growth spurt. Jerome came to us with a proposition. You're turning away clients, he noted during our weekly strategy meeting. You need to scale. There's a prime office space in the capital city. I want to invest $250,000 for a 20% equity stake to help you open a second location. It was a massive step. Candace and I debated it for days with our lawyer, Nicole. Giving up equity was scary, but the opportunity was undeniable. We signed the deal. The expansion was brutal. Managing 2 offices, hiring a new managing director for the capital city branch, a rock star named Robin Foster, and implementing new systems to keep the culture aligned tested every ounce of my leadership ability. But we did it. Within 4 months, the second office was profitable. Then, I received a phone call that I never expected. Simone? It's Renee Jackson. I stiffened, gripping the phone. The woman who had helped destroy my marriage. How did you get this number? From Brandon's old phone, she said. Look, I know you hate me. You should. But I wanted to apologize. I knew he was married. He told me it was over, but I knew better. I was selfish. Why tell me this now? I asked coldly. Because I left him months ago. When he lost the money, I saw who he really was. A narcissist. I heard about your success. Velocity Creative is everywhere. It made me realize. I helped him try to break a woman who was worth 10 of him. I'm sorry. I appreciate the apology, I said, but I don't forgive you. I've moved on. I don't need your guilt to validate me. Fair enough, she said. Goodbye, Simone. Hanging up, I felt a strange sense of closure. Brandon had lost everyone. Renee had moved on. And I was sitting in the corner office of a multi-city agency. We made the Business Monthly Top 50 Agencies to Watch list, ranking number 32. It was a validation of everything we had built. We were attracting talent from top firms. We were winning awards. One afternoon, Gabriel called. Simone, I have a request. I'm focusing my investment firm on women entrepreneurs. I want to feature you as a case study. Your story, from the divorce to this, it's inspiring. I'd be honored, I said. You know, Gabriel added, his voice soft, watching you these last 2 years. You're the strongest person I know. Brandon was a fool. He was, I agreed. But I'm not doing this to prove him wrong anymore. I'm doing it to prove myself right. The business was thriving, but more importantly, I was thriving. I bought a new house, a modern glass-walled sanctuary with a garden. I had friends who loved me, a mother who was my rock, and a partner in Candace who shared my vision. I had built a life that felt like mine. And then came the invitation to the Regional Business Awards. I was nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. It felt like the summit of the mountain I had been climbing. But I didn't know that the ghosts of the valley were waiting for me there. The grand ballroom downtown was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and anticipation. I wore an emerald green gown that made me feel regal, a stark departure from the red dress I had worn on that horrible night at Marcelosa's. Candace was beside me in royal blue, gripping my hand. "We look like superheroes," she whispered. "We are superheroes," I whispered back. Our table was filled with our tribe: Mom, Gabriel, Jerome, and key members of the Velocity team. We were celebrating regardless of whether I won. When the announcer called my name for Entrepreneur of the Year, the room erupted. I walked to the stage, legs trembling slightly but head held high. I accepted the heavy glass sculpture and looked out at the sea of faces. 2 years ago, I began into the microphone, I was told by someone I loved that I was nowhere near his level. I was told my dreams were a joke. I could have believed him. Instead, I chose to believe in myself. I dedicated the award to anyone who had ever been underestimated. As I walked off stage, the applause was deafening. I felt invincible. And then I saw him. Brandon was standing near the back of the room, near the bar. He wasn't dressed for a gala. His suit was dated, his tie crooked. He looked out of place, a smudge on a pristine painting. He intercepted me as I tried to return to my table. "Simone," he said. The people nearby went quiet. They recognized him from the magazine articles, or perhaps they just sensed the tension radiating off us. "Brandon," I said, clutching my award. "What are you doing here?" "I snuck in," he admitted. "I wanted to see you win." "You need to leave." "Wait, please." His voice rose, desperate and cracking. He turned to the crowd gathering around us. "I need to say this. Everyone needs to hear this." Jerome appeared at my side, ready to intervene, but I held up a hand. 2 years ago, Brandon shouted, tears streaming down his face, I humiliated this woman. I told her she wasn't on my level. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. She is the most talented person I've ever known. I cheated on her, I stole from her, and look at her now. She built an empire while I destroyed my life. He fell to his knees. Actually fell to his knees in the middle of the ballroom. "I'm sorry, Simone. I'm so sorry. Please, just tell me there's a chance. I can change. We can start over." The room was dead silent. Hundreds of the city's most powerful people were watching Brandon Bennett beg. It was a scene of ultimate patheticness. I looked down at him and I realized I felt nothing. No spark of love, no flare of hatred. Just a profound indifference. "Thank you for the apology," I said, my voice clear and projecting to the room. "But I don't need it. And I don't need you. Simone, please." "No," I said firmly. "We are done. I have built a life that is full and happy, and you are not part of it. I wish you peace, Brandon, but you will find it far away from me." I turned to Jerome. "I think it's time for him to leave." Security guards materialized and escorted a sobbing Brandon out of the hall. The room hesitated, then burst into supportive applause. Strangers came up to shake my hand, not just for the award, but for the boundary I had just set. "That took courage," a woman whispered to me. "That," Mom said, handing me a glass of champagne as I sat down, "was the final exorcism. He's gone, baby." Later that night, back at my new house, we sat in the living room, Mom, Candace, and me, debriefing the madness. "He really thought a public display would win you back," Candace marveled. "Narcissists always think grand gestures fix everything." "It confirmed everything," I said, looking at my award on the mantel. "I'm free. I'm really truly free." My phone buzzed with texts from friends and clients who had already heard the gossip. But one text from Gabriel stood out. "You deserved better then, and you've built better now. Proud of you." I slept better that night than I had in years. The dragon had been slain, not by a sword, but by my own indifference. 2.5 years after the dinner at Marcelosa's, I stood at a podium again. This time, it wasn't an awards gala. It was the graduation ceremony at State University. I looked out at 500 students in caps and gowns, their faces full of hope and terror. You will meet people who tell you that you aren't ready, I told them. People who say you aren't enough. People who try to determine your value for you. Do not listen to them. Your worth is not a negotiation. The speech was a hit. Afterward, students lined up to talk to me, young women telling me they wanted to start their own companies, young men asking about ethical leadership. I felt a sense of legacy taking root. Velocity Creative was now a juggernaut. We had 4 offices and 62 employees. We were projecting $7 million in revenue. And the industry had noticed. A week after the graduation, I received a call from Summit Media Group, a national conglomerate based in New York. They wanted to acquire us. The offer was staggering. $15 million for a 40% stake. Candace and I would retain majority control and operational independence, but we would have the capital to go national. We sat in my office, staring at the term sheet. This is life-changing money, Candace whispered. $5 million cash for each of us, plus the operating capital. We did this, I said, tearing up. From that tiny room with the leaky window to this. We signed the deal. To celebrate, I made a reservation. Not at a trendy new spot, but at Marcelosa's. Candace was hesitant. Are you sure? Absolutely, I said. I want to close the circle. We walked in. Mom, Candace, Gabriel, and Jerome. The restaurant looked exactly the same. The crystal chandelier still sparkled like diamonds. But the woman walking beneath it was different. We were seated at a prime table. The manager approached, looking nervous. Ms. Bennett, I recognize you from the papers. I recall an incident here years ago. I want you to know, that man is banned from this establishment. I smiled. Thank you. But tonight is about celebration. I raised my glass. 3 years ago, I sat in this room and felt like my life was ending. Tonight, I'm sitting here with the people who helped me build a new one. To choosing yourself. To choosing yourself, the table echoed. As we left, feeling the warm night air, I checked my phone. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the Summit deal. You earned it. Brandon. I looked at the screen for a moment. Then, without a second thought, I blocked the number and deleted the thread. I drove home to my beautiful house, walked into my office, and looked at the wall. The magazine cover, the award, the photo of my team, and the simple business card Gabriel had given me that night. Call me. You're going to need a friend. I sat down and typed a new document, a manifesto for the next chapter of my life. 1. I define my own worth. 2. I surround myself with those who add value. 3. I lift others as I climb. 4. I never dim my light for anyone. The next morning, I went for a run as the sun rose over the city. The sky was painting itself in oranges and pinks, a masterpiece of a new day. I was Simone Bennett. I was a millionaire, a CEO, and a survivor. But mostly I was free. I picked up my pace, running toward the horizon, ready for whatever came next. I was finally, exactly, on my own level. If you like the story, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.